think there's a commonly held misperception that the leaders of the Democrats and the Republicans actually want to win the midterms. It's a bizarre scenario, but when you see someone like Chuck Schumer over the last week attending a pro-Israeli rally in New York, and if you believe in protecting Jewish people, there's a variety of ways you can do that. Certainly, speaking out against genocide is a great start to that, and you can see Mark Maron and Jon Stewart and Larry David and all kinds of Jewish people in America, and millions of Jewish people in America saying we don't support this. This is terrible. But there's Chuck Schumer, standing next to Smotrich, like this person who supports genocide, giving them one of the most animated speeches I've ever seen him give about how passionate he is about Israel, and not mentioning a thing about the horrific things that they've done in the last few years and the last few decades. Let's be honest. So how could it be that the minority leader of the Democratic Senate is doing that? When less than 10% of the Democratic base supports Israel. Well, the answer is, certainly he's going to be retiring in 2028. He doesn't really care about winning the midterms. Not really. Winning the midterms means a lot more work for him personally. If he were the Senate Majority Leader, he'd have to actually move legislation. He'd have to lead investigations or kind of be the figure that manages that whole process. Being the Minority Leader, no one really expects a whole lot of you because you have very little power. And the bottom line is, you can't really move legislation. You have very little power of subpoena. You can't really even do much against judicial nominees or anything like that. So for Chuck Schumer, he's gone a glide path. He's 74 around there years old. He's on a glide path to retirement. I don't really think he cares about winning. Look at the people he's endorsed. And I think there's quite a similar situation, actually a very similar situation for Donald Trump. Why is Donald Trump endorsing Ken Paxton or proposing this politically toxic slush fund for January 6th, felons? Pardoned as they may be, they're still felons. And the answer is he doesn't, he cares maybe a little about winning the midterms, but by far his main concern right now is enriching himself personally, plundering as much as he possibly can money-wise for himself and his family until he has to leave office. And when he leaves office, he's essentially immune from prosecution. So, there's really not a lot of incentive for him to try to win the midterms. And he's, trumpeting about how, my candidates won in these races. Well, yeah, of course, your candidates won in those races because, you're the leader of a cult. And a lot of those candidates are probably going to lose in the general election because, you have the ability to produce the most, right-wing candidates in your party. No one doubts that. But the ability to actually win the Senate and the House is very, you've done not only nothing to do that, he's never campaigned really for a whole lot of the people who might be winning. He hasn't thrown money into the races, which he should be doing, all that kind of stuff. What he cares about is his ballroom and making a whole bunch of money and getting as many corrupt deals on the table as he can before he leaves. It's kind of race against time until 2028. So you see these two figures, they're not so different from each other. They're both these kind of long-standing, machine politicians, these New York guys who, crave attention. They are willing to do things to their caucus that doesn't help them, that actually sets them back and makes it harder for them to win. And, as long as those two are in power, and people like that are in power in those two parties, nothing of value will get done in the United States of America.